name's Krista Biyad. I'm the Outreach Director at Foreign Policy for America. Foreign Policy for America is an advocacy organization working to strengthen support for principled U.S. foreign policy. And previously, I worked for an NGO on gender-based violence issues in North Africa, and also worked at the British Embassy and a few other different positions in the field. I got my master's in international affairs from American University, SAS, and my bachelor's in political science and economics from Roger Williams University in Rhode Island. I really was never one of those people who knew exactly what I wanted to do with my career. When I started undergrad actually at Roger Williams University, I was an architecture major, and that's what I thought I wanted to do, and that's why I went to that school, but very quickly realized it wasn't actually for me because it wasn't just drawing pretty pictures. So I became a pre-law major. That also wasn't for me, and eventually landed on political science and economics. And even when I graduated and towards the end of undergrad, I was working on domestic economic policy and doing research on that front. But at the same time, in my political science degree, kind of always knew I cared about international affairs and I liked the courses and potentially wanted to pursue something down those lines, but I didn't really know what types of careers were out there. So I just started talking to professors at my undergrad, probably my junior or senior year, just kind of asking them, what are the types of careers that would be out there if I wanted to pursue things in international affairs? And they gave me really great advice. And ultimately, I had a lot of folks tell me, from my professors to previous bosses at internships, about how important it would be to have a master's degree and to be successful in the field, and ultimately decided to pursue that as I was thinking about another career. It was also helpful to go to grad school knowing that I wanted to work in international affairs. I wanted to work on specific issues. I knew the regions that I cared about, but I was still trying to suss out what types of careers I could have. And I was able to get that out of my master's program too, to learn a little bit more, both from my own colleagues in the classroom, but also professors and people I met outside of the classroom, what else was out there and what that path would look like, which was nice. Yeah, so I mean, through my current work, I led a project where we traveled across the country and talked to local leaders, like small business owners, faith leaders, diaspora leaders, about foreign policy issues. But we started with what we call interdomestic issues, so issues that cross-cut traditional boundaries of foreign and domestic. And so climate change, immigration, democracy, human rights. And the reason we did that is that, we would meet people where they're at. An issue like climate or democracy is relatable and it's affecting someone's community. And then as you talk about democracy, you might eventually get to Ukraine, right? And what's happening in Eastern Europe. You might eventually get to the Middle East and what's happening in Gaza. But you don't start with that because it maybe is not the first thing that people are thinking about when they sit down at their kitchen table at the end of the day. So for people who are working in government jobs and policymakers across the field, trying to talk to Americans across the country, whether it's your friends and family or strangers and local community leaders who you want to engage in the conversation, you really have to meet them where they're at. Try and take a step back and understand, what is it that you care about? What is it that's happening in your life, and how is my work now kind of connected to that, and find a way to kind of thread it that way. It's never going to be perfect, right? I learned this in the project too. We would have everyone go around and try and suss out what some of their biggest priorities and concerns were. And sometimes those weren't relevant, and that's okay. You can try and find another way to relate to someone and then explain the work that you're doing. But a lot of times there's some relatable pieces in there that then you can kind of pull a thread to start to slowly explain what you're doing in government. I mean, I'm a very proud Arab American, very proud Moroccan, and I've never been shy about that, imposter syndrome or not, earlier on. I've always stayed true to that piece, and I've always been very honest about how that shaped some of my opinions in the Middle East and on U.S. foreign policy more broadly. And I think, while some people may not love that, the majority of people have really valued that perspective. And it was important to me to continue to lean into it. And I think that I can point back to that as actually a part or a reason for my success is I was able to lean into who I am as a diverse individual and as an Arab American and as a Moroccan, and use that to my advantage and put it at the front of different conversations to say, like, this isn't a weakness that I'm trying to hide. This is who I am. And I think that really helped me, actually. And I would encourage folks to also do that who come from different diverse backgrounds. I will say, I think it made me more interested in a certain part of the world. North Africa and the Middle East are the regions that I'm the most educated on and interested in. So that's definitely influenced me there. And I'll also say, coming from an Arab American family and an Arab American background, um, you know, family is very important, and international careers kind of take you around the world, and there's a hard it's a little hard to juggle, like, how do I meet family obligations while also pursuing this career that requires me to be in North Africa for 6 months or over here for 6 months and traveling around. And it's really important for you to have those conversations early on with your family to set expectations, to know, like, this is what I want to do. This is really important to me, and to garner their support and recognize that sometimes you might not get that support, and that's okay. If it's something that you want to do, you'll find a support system outside of that, and eventually people will come along and realize that it's the best thing for you and that you're happy and doing what you love. Remind yourself that the traditional aspect of this field has failed us. I mean, at the end of the day, there's the foreign policy establishment being male, pale, and Yale for a long time hasn't really served us very well. And that's, just a fact. There's a lot of incredible people who are part of the foreign policy establishment and who fit that description that I just put out there, but not all of them. And they can't do it without us. So if you remind yourself that, hopefully it gives you that confidence to be in the room and stand up tall. The other piece is, the diversity that you bring, your background, your experience holds a lot of value. And there are some people in the space who are genuinely desperate to understand that perspective because they can't. Those lived experiences that you bring to the table, everyone else at the table doesn't have them, right? And they really need them in order to do their own jobs too. So you are bringing an exceptional amount of value to the room and to the space, and the foreign policy community, and frankly, the country needs you to be a part of that U.S. foreign policy establishment. And there's clear, evidence and proof of the value that we bring as women of color and people of color across the country, and really want to encourage folks to remain confident and see that value in themselves when they're walking into a room.